Joe Reinagel, Jason Minnix, The Blitz.
It is The Blitz here on San Antonio Sports Star, ESPN AM 1250, 103.3 FM online, sasportstar.com. He is Joe Reinagel. I'm Jason Minnix. Interesting day up on the 40 acres up there with Texas Longhorn football that, quite frankly, I think is all the coaches doing, whether he meant it to be or not. Let's talk about it. Brian Davis of the Austin American Statesman joining us now on what he thought was just going to be your typical slow Monday. But I got to admit, Brian, you had a tweet earlier today, and I'll just read it, at B. Davis AAS. Texas coach Steve Sarkisian wasn't too happy with the much honesty last week with reporters about player behavior. Sarklaff said he won't be talking to you guys for a while. And I went, the hell is Brian tweeting about? And I had to do some digging. Give us a little backstory.
When you say it like that, it's funny. Basically what happened, senior defensive tackle Moro Ojomo had a 25-minute Q&A session with us last Thursday, at the end of last week. Players, we get to talk to players on Thursdays here in the spring. And, very wide-ranging discussion. Always an incredible discussion talking with him. And, the idea of culture came up. What is the team's culture? What is the team's locker room? Here's the thing about it. You have to remember, going back to the beginning of spring, Sarkisian was asked about, do you feel like there are more players buying in now than there were this time last year? And he says, well, I think our culture is great, but you really need to ask our players that. Okay, we will, right? Moro tell us about the culture. And he said, well, I think there's too many 18 to 22-year-olds, worried about chasing women, chasing money, chasing alcohol. They're putting all of that over winning. And, he said that the culture here is embedded in Texas itself. And so that, is sort of like, whoa, it's ingrained. I'm sorry, I didn't mean embedded, ingrained. That's his word. The culture is ingrained at Texas. And, this is a guy who, like I said, he's going into his fifth year. He wants to win. Anyone who knows anything about Moro Ojomo knows this guy is he badly wants Texas to win. If any fan listened to any of his interviews, you would come away very impressed with what a high-level thinker he is. And he's tired of mediocrity, and he's tired of losing. And, here's the thing. As you guys know, with a room of 85 scholarship players, you're very rarely going to have 100% buy-in. You're just not, right? That's just human nature. But if you can weed that number down into the single digits, now you've got something going. So I think that's what Moro is pointing out, is that there's still maybe too many guys that are into partying, hanging out on 6th Street. That's what he referenced. And not enough focus on lifting weights, film, training, and winning.
Brian, as you say that, and I love what Moro Ojomo said, and I think he's 100% right. What surprises me is it didn't make national news on Thursday. I missed it. Joe missed it. Based on Twitter, a lot of people missed it. It seems like it didn't get outside of Austin city limits. But when the coach says, I'm not happy with what he says, and he's not going to talk to the media for a while, now it's turning into a national story. And it kind of surprises me. Is that an indication of where Texas football is, that a player could say that kind of indictment on a program, and it doesn't get picked up nationally?
I think it's a little bit of both. Look, I was standing right there the whole time, and my initial thought was, wow, this is interesting stuff. I'll save this for my spring wrap-up story, right? Because if you just know Moro, you know just how he talks, how he thinks. It's sort of like, this isn't something that I need to run to my keyboard to, right? But you're exactly right. When the head coach spends 3 to 4 minutes talking about it and says, you guys aren't going to talk to this guy for a while. That obviously raises eyebrows, and now it's sort of a thing, right? I don't know. I guess you could chalk it up to slow news day, maybe, But the fact is that what Moro Ojomo said, in my opinion, wasn't really all that bad. But when Sark says, "Well, we're gonna keep the discussion of this in house," and then he goes on for 3 minutes talking about why it shouldn't be kept in house and all this other stuff, it's like, well, wait a minute, you know. And remember, again, I have to say this again, Coach, you're the one that told us to go ask the players about the culture, right?
Yep.
And so we did. And, you know, you just didn't like the answer. And you just didn't like how that answer kind of got out, you know, into the social media world, so to speak.
Well, you know, Brian, that brings up a good point that it's almost like it embarrassed Sarkisian. But if you're a senior and you're a leader of that football team and you think there's a problem, and I'm sure this isn't the first time he's brought it up in-house. I mean, I don't see it with a guy being able to speak that freely and say what he said. I'm sure this has been talked about, if not with Sarkisian and some of the coaches, certainly with some of the other players. So it sounds like a problem that Sarkisian may not have a handle on.
It certainly looks that way. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I can't sit here and say that they do or do not have a problem with that. You know, Sark talked today about. In fact, I asked him point blank today. You know, do you have a good feel on 22 guys? And he said, well, in reality, you would want 44, right? Two deep on both sides of the ball. So out of 85 scholarship players, if you can find 44. Then you're working with something. So, I mean, I don't think even the head coach would expect to have 100% buy-in, right? I don't know. I just think it's interesting. But my whole thing is this. I mean, you guys know, 6th Street, it wasn't like that was just created, just a few years ago, right? I mean, 6th Street and Texas and wanting to go hang out and girls and all. I mean, that's been here forever, right? There's nothing new there. Right. So what's different? And the answer is, I don't know. I mean, they've just been mediocre for so long that it's hard.
I think that's what's different.
That's harder.
Don't you think that's what's different is the mediocrity of the University of Texas football program? And I think some of these guys that have been there are tired of it. They want to be back in the national conversation.
Without a doubt. That's absolutely it. And it's no different than, freshmen and sophomores, are just there. That some of them like wearing a uniform or whatever. But when you get to be a junior or senior, you want to win. You don't want to leave with nothing. And so Moro was a guy who he was a freshman on the 18 team that went to the Sugar Bowl. He's been there for the Kansas loss, last year. So he's been to the Big 12 championship game and lost, the Sugar Bowl and won, and then he's been a part of 5 and 7 last year. And, at some point, you just get fed up, and it's like, let's start calling this out for what it is. And I honestly think more people should do it myself.
I do too. Like I said, as a Longhorn fan, I love what the guy said. I'm just mad that I didn't hear about it on Thursday or Friday, and I only know it because the coach is mad about it, and the coach doesn't want us to know about it. So it's a storm that he's kind of brought on himself as we visit with Brian Davis of the Austin American Statesman. Now they are going through spring ball. So let's talk about the good stuff. How's Ewers looking at quarterback?
The reports I get from the people who are allowed to spy on practice for me is that some days he looks great, some days he looks like a freshman, right? Which, quite honestly, I would sort of expect that. I would expect someone who really hasn't played a lot of football over the last 2 years to be up and down a little bit. And so, is he going to be the opening day starter? A lot of people think so. I mean, I certainly wouldn't bet against that, right? I liken it to Trevor Lawrence. You don't draw Trevor Lawrence and then sit him on the bench. You got a high level blue chip recruit. You put him in the game. Get him going. So it's not going to shock me if Quinn Ewers does win the starting job. A lot of people here have kind of been very dismissive of Hudson Card. Maybe that's because everybody just remembers last year. But certainly he's probably had I think he's had a very quiet off season. Meanwhile, Quinn Ewers' talk has been everywhere. So we'll see. I mean, Sark, in my opinion, picked the wrong quarterback to start last year, and look how that worked out for him. So, he he doesn't get a second mulligan on this. He has to get the quarterback decision right this time around. They cannot come out of non-conference totally kind of unaware of where they're going, once league play gets here.
Which brings me to this point, Brian, and I hate to bring this up, but how's Gary Patterson doing? Is he looking over Sark's shoulder, or what's going on with Patterson?
We haven't been allowed to talk to him. I the last time that I got to speak with him was before the ink on his new situation was dry, and once that thing went into the UT HR office, that was it. He's now a member of the staff, and you're not allowed to talk to the staff. The world will spin off its axis if you talk to the defensive coordinator around here. That's the way Sark portrays it, anyway. But no, I think that Patterson. I think he's going to help Pete Kwiatkowski for sure. They are friends. Look, Gary's defensive mind is got to be amazing. He's forgotten more football than we'll ever know, probably most likely. And so for him to be able to add self-scouting to help the coaches prepare the game plans, go over tips, trades, anything, that could only help the cause, I would think.
Brian Davis from the Austin American Statesman joining us here on the Blitz. Sounds like you're having fun covering the 40 acres in Sark's second year.
Look, this is what the Bevos are, man. Everything matters here but the winning sometimes. There's no doubt. Everything here is front page news except the winning, right? That's typically how it's been, for the last decade. Think about this. Think about this, guys. We talk about it, but I just don't think it really hits home for some people. The class of 2023, think about this, guys. The class of 2023, okay, these recruits that they're going after now, most of these kids weren't even alive when Vince scored on 4th and 5.
Wow.
They weren't even alive, okay? They weren't even walking this planet. And so, that should really drive home the level of, I hate to keep using this word, but it is. It's mediocrity. That's the level of mediocrity. This thing has never been the same since the 5th play of the 2009 title game against Alabama, when Cole McCoy was basically knocked out. And I think that's what knocked Mac off course. That's what knocked the Battleship off course. Charlie and Tom tried to get it turned around. They couldn't, and now it's up to Steve.
Wow.
That reference just brings down the room, Brian. Appreciate it.
But it is absolutely true.
Most people say, they never seen the Cowboys win a Super Bowl, and that just makes you feel old. That just made everybody listening feel much older. Man, Brian, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, to me, that's why guys like Ojomo and you want guys like Ojomo, Bijan, Xavier, whether it's Quinn or Hudson, whoever, one of those guys. These are the guys that you want to ride with, Yeah. I absolutely think that Sarkisian has some of the right guys in some of the key spots. I absolutely believe that. But I also believe that he needs more help. I think that they need more guys in more spots. They have some really, really good pillars. They just need more troops, so to speak.
Good stuff. Brian, I know you got a busy day. Appreciate it. Make sure you're following Brian on Twitter at BDavisAAS for Austin American Statesman, so you don't miss big stories like we apparently did on Thursday. And when you go to his Twitter page, you see a beautiful rack of ribs as his cover photo, and that's worth going there and hitting the follow button all by itself. Brian, appreciate the time.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.
Good stuff. Brian Davis from the Austin American Statesman.